So hi everyone, I'm Sarah. I currently lead the channel reporting team at Citizens Advice. And I'm joined here with my colleague Mankeet, who is a senior data analyst in the Impact team. Today, we are going to present on how we used our data for good during the pandemic. For this first section, I will be going over how we used our data internally to enable better decision making. In the Data and Impact team, we worked together to build a consolidated Google Sheet dashboard that helped our service tackle the COVID-19 crisis. The Citizens Advice service is made up of the national charity and our network of over 270 independent local citizens advice charities in England and Wales. Our role as a national charity is to enable local citizens advice to deliver their services and to jointly deliver other services at the national level. Together, we deliver the witness service, PensionWise, the consumer service, the help to claim service, and debt advice funded by the Money and Pension Service. We're also the consumer champion for the energy market and the statutory consumer watchdog for the Postal Service. Our diverse range of services also means that we have a diverse range of technology and databases, as we have different suppliers for our different services. For example, our web data is supplied by Google Analytics, and our generalist phone service, Advice Line, is supplied by KCOM. Until spring 2020, we never had all of our operational data in one place. This data dashboard was novel and different. Every tab is essentially a different data source from our varied data. Our stakeholders were also varied and included operations managers, heads of departments, colleagues in policy and advocacy, and so on. Everyone wanted something in one place. I'll now give a brief walkthrough of just some high-level tabs in the dashboard. So I'll go on to our Advice Line tab. So Advice Line is our generalist phone service where our supplier is KCOM. For Advice Line, we have charts that compare demand and percent of demand answered across 2019, 2020, and 2021. We have also updated the calculation for demand to exclude forwarded calls, as these calls are demand for our other partner services and not for Advice Line. You can see that demand for 2021 is trending higher than demand for 2019 and 2020. This could be partially due to the rollout of free phone across our Advice Line service, which started around October 2020 and finished in March 2021. By making all Advice Line numbers free phone, the barrier to entry is now easier for clients as they can now reach out to us for free. Of course, another reason behind the increase in Advice Line demand is our clients now use phone as the standard method of contacting us instead of visiting us face-to-face in a local office. Many people are also forced into claiming benefits for the first time or seeking advice on furlough. The percent of demand answered has been trending higher than 2019 and trending higher than 2020 until around the end of March, which is also a point where we started to see a decline in the number of active advisors. We saw active advisors dip during the Easter holidays, but they are rising again now, and so is the number of calls answered. Another interesting tab is our demographics tab. Let me scroll to it. So this is, again, a very interesting investigation, but we are collecting less of this data since the shift to telephone. Again, the data source for this tab is different from the one for Advice Line. Advisors currently ask for this information over the phone and is entered into our internal system. There has been a demographic shift in our client profile with regards to help to claim, as well as our other funded services. In terms of ethnicity, we're seeing a higher proportion of white people. In terms of age, we're seeing younger people. In terms of gender, there has been a gradual decline in the proportion of men that we see. The proportion of disabled clients has also reduced since the first lockdown. Many of the demographics are possibly being driven by the change in help to claim demographics, which has a more pronounced change. The people who get help to claim advice are the working age population. 1 in 5 working age people are classified as BAME, which would help explain ethnicity change. The working population would also explain the age and disability change. So let's go back to this slide deck. The dashboard has become a single source of truth, and data is accessible to all members of national staff. We also have fortnightly Zoom sessions where members of the Data and Impact team talk through the latest trends in the data. Any member of national staff can attend these meetings and ask questions about the data. The meeting is also recorded for those who can't make it in person. National staff in various teams now use the dashboard to make data-driven decisions. In the first feedback survey sent, 70.6% of respondents answered yes to the question, have you taken any decisions or actions as a result of the daily data report? Some examples of responses have been, it helps inform where we should prioritize our efforts as a team. We've updated our ongoing narrative around demand met, including updates to the network, staff, and the National Trustee Board. It's helped us with decisions on which pieces of research to take forward. For example, it was clear that phone was taking the brunt of the client's demand, and we're still leaving a lot of calls unanswered. It's helped us aid the steer of some product developments, help inform reallocation of resources across operations to support the changing needs of teams and services. I'm now going to pass it on to Mankeet, who's going to talk about how we used our data externally to help people understand the impact of the pandemic.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. So this first slide, it shows you the weekly advice page views on our website across 3 different years. So we have 2019, 2020, and 2021. So the yellow line is 2020, and you can see that around the middle of March last year, the traffic to our website spiked enormously. We had never seen such levels of traffic before, and March had the highest day, week, and month of traffic ever on the Citizen Advice website. And during this time, we also saw a lot of interesting trends in our data. The pages people were looking at changed literally every day. So if you go to the next slide, please. So initially, we were tracking these trends, and the stuff people was looking at was changing every day. So this is a bump chart which shows you the ranking of our most viewed pages during March to early April. And what you can see here is that during so pre-lockdown month, that's around March 16th, we didn't have much coronavirus content on our website, but the content that we did have was spiking a lot. This was stuff around pages on sick pay, pages on redundancy, people checking if their flight is delayed or cancelled, people checking if they can pay their energy bills on time or not, and stuff like this. And as we moved into lockdown 1, we started producing more relevant coronavirus content, and the relevant pages that we were putting out was spiking on the website as soon as they came up. You can see that clearly in the lines which just spike up. So the first example is the yellow line. If you can't pay your bills because of coronavirus, that spikes up as we introduced it on the 21st of April. Then you can see the purple line, coronavirus check what benefits you can get. We introduced that on the 24th, and it shot up in ranking immediately. And then the biggest page which has been viewed on our website, which is our furlough page. So coronavirus, if your employer has told you not to work, that shot up again as soon as we introduced it. So these were the sort of trends that we were seeing early on in the pandemic. And if you go to the next slide, please. So we were seeing these trends, and our funders had asked us for weekly reports concerning these trends because they thought that our data was a really good place where they could understand how people were reacting to the pandemic. So early on, our reports were really standard. We had already thought that using page rankings would be a good way to show this data, present this data. But since these were funder reports, the sort of data visualizations and the data reporting we were putting out was pretty basic. These are 2 examples from our very first report. So you can see we just had general tables, and we were showing page movements in terms of absolute line charts rather than the relative rankings. So absolute line charts are good in that they show the number and very big spikes. So you can see that certain pages spiked in traffic at certain various points in time, but you don't get a good view of how the pages are moving between themselves, how the rankings are changing, and how certain content trends up and certain content trends down. So to do that, we started using bump charts in these weekly reports, like the one that we saw previously. And we thought that it would be a good idea to share these bump charts on Twitter as well, so that we could reach an audience that we couldn't reach through our general channels. So go to the next slide, please. So yeah, we started doing this. We would make our weekly reports, publish them to our stakeholders, and then share the same insights on Twitter as well. And what happened was that we saw that there was a really good engagement on Twitter, and we had engagement from sources that we wouldn't have had before. So the first tweet you can see on the left, that's an example of a union leader interacting with us, saying that they were also seeing trends around furlough and redundancy in their union members that we were seeing in our data as well. The second tweet is our 3-month on report, which was really well received by everyone. It was picked up a lot by news channels, by other charities, and it really made us realize how powerful and important our data was, and how we could really show trends very nicely using bump charts over a 3-month period. Can you go to the next slide, please? So during the initial 3 months, what we learned was that sharing data via bump graphs rather than standard line charts, that makes it easier to highlight trends, talk about trends and movement in pages. Sharing our insights on Twitter helped us reach audiences such as other news agencies, other government departments. We had organic mentions in the Houses of Parliament because of the data work that we undertook on Twitter. This helped us improve our brand image and secure funding. And other charities, places like Number 10, the Depart and DWP, they were interested in using our data as well. So we set up a publicly shared Google Doc. And you can link to this. We'll be sharing the slide deck later, so you can link to this as well, go through it. And if you could go to the next slide, please. Now, after the first 3 months, the trends in our data slowed down quite a lot. So earlier we were seeing that pages were spiking every day. Trends were moving every day, but now those movements were happening across weeks and months rather than every day. So we had to adapt to this. We couldn't be putting out our reports in the same frequency as we were earlier. So what we did was we decided that we'd come up with a report template and we'd publish our data trends every month to our stakeholders, and we'd share any relevant insights on Twitter as and when they came. So this worked out pretty well for us. And it also gave our stakeholders like a standard set of data or metrics that they could expect from us every month, so that they still knew that we were a good source to come for when it came to understanding people's concerns, and a good way to maintain our engagement with our stakeholders. And we continue to do this until December. And if you can go to the next slide, please. We also experimented with making animated charts. So we had a whole week on Twitter where we were sharing these animated charts to drive up engagement with the content, and it worked really well. So if you could click on the first chart, please. So this is an example of a racing line chart. So this is just a standard bump chart, but we can change it into a racing line chart. And we were using this to talk about our issues, because that is something that we hadn't talked about before a lot. We had mainly talking about web data in our reports. We thought it would be nice to share how our issues have changed over time as well. And as you can see with the racing line chart, it's really nice to see how different issues they change over time, and also good to see how certain issues remain over time as well. And if we can go to the second graph, please. So this is another interesting thing that we saw on our website, was that some pages spike in rankings only on the weekends. So they're viewed relatively more on the weekends compared to the weekdays. Now, you could show this in a standard bump chart as well. It would look nice, but when you animate it, it brings a whole new dimension to it, and it really shows you how these pages move up on the weekends and gets users really engaged with the content. So these are just two examples of some of the charts that we put out, and these were made using a tool called Flourish. So this is a free tool. There's a paid version as well, but most of the templates are free. So you could use this if you want. And if you could go to the next slide, please. I think you have to click. Yeah. So at the same time, we also experimented with using other tools to make animated charts. So this one was made in R, and this looked at the whole last year worth of data. So that was April 2020 till March 2021, and we looked at the weekly advice page views, their rankings. So if you could click on that chart, please. And the good thing about this visual is that with the visual that we saw earlier, you don't get the historical context of what's going on with the racing line chart. But over here, you can see how the lines have moved over time, and you can see how they're moving currently as well. So that's why we chose R to do this. And if you could go to the next slide, please. So more recently, we published our Life in Lockdown report. So that looked at the past year's worth of data, and we really brought out the trends that we were seeing over the past year. given that it had been a year, we weren't expecting much movement, but there was a lot of stuff which had happened. So we really brought those trends out in this report. And again, we followed it up with a mention on Twitter and sharing the graph that we shown earlier to drive up engagement with our report as well. And if you could go to the final slide, please. So what were our learnings from this next phase, like after the first 3 months? So we really saw that animated graphs drove more interactions and attention on social media with the content. And we also found that the real story lies in highlighting the trends. So numbers are good. It's good to say that we had so many million page views on our website, and certain pages spiked at this time with so many views and stuff. But these are really large numbers for sensitive topics that might not strike the right chord. So it's really important to focus on the trends and really find data visualizations which bring those out. And our latest Life in Lockdown report just had 3 big numbers in it. The rest is all us talking about trends, bringing those out. And we also found that it's really important to have a changing strategy to engage with external stakeholders as the trends in your data change. And that's it from us. Thank you. There's some resources as well here. So you can look at the online web pages report. That updates every day. And you can see all our web content there, what's trending up, what's trending down. There's also the advice trends dashboards, where you can see how issues data changes over time. We update that every month. And there's a link to all our published reports, so all the external data reports that we've been putting out. So thank you. Thanks very much. Cool. So there's a question from Sahil. Can you share the R packages? Sure. We used tidyverse to clean the data, and ggAnimate to animate the data, and ggplot to make the charts. And that's what we did. I hope that answers your question.
We just had another question pop up. Did you find that there was any resistance to sharing the insights publicly?
So there wasn't much internal resistance, I would say. People were really excited about the whole prospect of us doing this. It was just about framing the insights that we were seeing in a positive way and highlighting the trends in a sensitive manner. So not to be too excited about all the large numbers, but just pointing out what they meant and just conveying that in a sensitive way, I think. How we were able to secure funding. So the thing was that it just showed that we were just a credible source of data to basically our main funder. I'm not sure the exact things, but the feedback that we got from government departments was that they found the data very useful, and they were making decisions based off the data that we were sharing with them, especially in the initial months of the pandemic. So it just built a really good case for us to get more funding for us to switch to telephone advice. Since we were a primarily face-to-face model, so we needed to secure funding for us to move to a telephone-first platform. And showing that people were coming to the website and really needed our advice content built a good case for that. So the next question was, can you discuss the journey you have been on internally to pursue staff who may not have data skills to the point where most of your organization now sees a value in the data you produce? Sarah, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, sure. Let me just reread the question. I think there were always charts that internal stakeholders were using. It's just that with this data dashboard, it was the first time that all those charts kind of came to one location, whereas before they're all kind of like separately, and there wasn't much transparency about like what certain teams were using versus teams not having the like data dashboards themselves in terms of their own internal what they were using like internally in their own teams, whereas the data dashboard is just like a place where all staff can now come to look at, instead of operations having their own separate report. Now it's available in this data dashboard. I think it was more about a journey of having it all come to one place and less of a journey of just persuading people to make data-driven decisions. I hope that answers that question.
And so moving on to the next question, Owen asks, do you do any regional breakdowns like the advice trends Tableau dashboards? So on the advice line, like the advice trends Tableau dashboard, sorry. So on the advice trends dashboard, I think there is a tab which gives you regional breakdowns. So I haven't looked at those in a while, but I think they are there the last time I checked. So you should be able to find regional breakdowns there. But we can't do that for our web data yet. For the web data, it's just nationwide. We don't collect location data. That's just a policy thing that we have online. So we can't do that. But I think we can do it for the case data that we have on advice trends. So moving on to the next question, Kirsten asks, has it changed how you will work now in the future? Will you continue sharing threads, for example? So yes, we still will want to keep sharing trends. We still see interesting things in our data. So most recently, I think we've been seeing that a particular page on finding free or affordable legal help has been trending up quite a lot, and we're not sure why that's happening. So we've been sharing that on Twitter with other charities as well, trying to find out if they're seeing similar trends and trying to figure out why that's happening. It's a really interesting trend. You wouldn't expect it to happen. Initially, when we saw pages on death and wills were going up because of all the coronavirus-related deaths, so you'd expect that. But at the same time, free or affordable legal help was also going up, that page. And that's continued to trend up since then, even though coronavirus deaths have fallen away. So it's interesting why people are still needing that advice. And other interesting trends, as and when they come, we'll continue to share them on Twitter. Sure. And Sahil asks, do you collect data from local CABs? If you do, what are some of the challenges and how have you managed these? So Sarah, do you want to take this one, or should I?
Yeah, sure. So we do collect data from local offices. So in the beginning, we mentioned that we are the national charity. We're actually also made up like 270 independent local citizens advice. So we definitely collect data in terms of like what clients they see, call data. To give you a more specific example, Advice Line, our generalist phone service, is offered by the bulk of our local offices. The challenge with that is that local offices have different setups, so the data does come in differently and it's not standardized. So in terms of managing this, it's kind of consolidating all of the data in the database and then doing a lot of testing just to make sure that the data is standardized and that we're able to report on it and be able to draw insights from that data despite the data coming in different formats. So a lot of time is spent cleansing the data and standardizing it. I hope that answers the question. If there are any follow-up questions, feel free to just put it in the chat.
And then moving on to our final question, Simon asks, would you be able to advise how I could scale your methods down for a local citizen's advice? What should I focus on? So if you were to scale it down for a single LCA, I would say that focus on the trends that you're seeing in your data, the issue types, and you could compare them to how they vary nationally. If there's some interesting trends that you see there, that would be good to highlight to your funders that we need funding for these in particular, as this is something which affects our region more. You could also look at the client experience scores that you have to see if you're doing well on client experience or not. You could bring out some of the interesting trends there. One thing that we have been noticing in our data is that client experience has been steady ever since we moved to the switched models to a telephony platform or from face-to-face, which is a really big achievement to be able to maintain the same levels of satisfaction. And if they've gone up for a specific client group, that just shows that you're delivering a really good service. We've also seen that people reporting on improved mental health due to our advice and physical health has gone up. So that's something else that you could show your funders as well. And just bring out that your LCA is doing a really great job. Those are some of the things that you can focus on.
Those are all the questions. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining today's session. You have our email addresses, so do feel free to send us an email if you do have any additional questions.